Rio Dream, written and narrated by Alan Walton. Margaret Stanton got out of her armchair and hobbled to the curtains and opened them. She winced. The reflected light was bright from the snow that surrounded her cottage. It had not been forecast. Her knees were hurting with the hot arthritis that had been plaguing her for the last few years. She had been waiting for over 2 years for her operation that could give her mobility again. She would phone her GP to see if he could speed things up for her. She really could not face another dreadful winter without this being sorted. She wanted to sit back in her chair, but instead painfully made her way to the kitchen for a mug of tea. It was then she realized that she had not eaten the evening before, and her stomach rumbled with emptiness. "I'll jolly well have to put up with it," she mumbled to herself. "Not going to get cold again like yesterday. The electric fire is going to be put on, and 3 bars to boot, and to hell with eating." The tea made, she toddled back to her armchair, close to the fire, and eased herself down into it with a grateful sigh. Her hand reaching out to switch on all 3 bars. Pure luxury. Her hands soon warmed with the radiant heat, and she took comfort from watching the flickering imitation coal, glowing red, interspersed with quite realistic yellow flames. Today was Roger's birthday. Ah, dear Roger. He'd been the perfect husband, and it had been such a loss. And she felt warm tears gracing her face. Since he had been gone, now just over a year, she had been in severe financial difficulties and with legal complications. There had been no execution of his will. She didn't really understand what the problem had been, save that Roger's solicitor had promised he would do what he could to speed things up. She could have gone into town and spoken to the people in the benefit office to get some help, but she was too proud to ask for help, and, anyway, she did not feel up to going there. It all filled her with dread. The facts and figures, the complicated questions, and so forth. Somehow she would manage with her state pension. It would all be sorted out, one of these days. She sipped her tea and grimaced. She had forgotten to put sugar in it. Never mind, it's not the end of the world," she mumbled, as she clasped the hot mug in her frail hands. She almost dropped it when she heard the front doorbell chime. Who could that be, she thought. She hobbled, in pain, to the front door, and unbolted it to see the postman driving off into the swirling snow. She leaned down slowly to pick up the letter laying there, and made her way back into the electric warmth and her comfy armchair. She held the letter up and looked at the postmark, but it was too faint for her to read. It might be news about Roger's will, she thought, but worse, it might be another reminder of a bill she needed to pay. As she fumbled to open it, she saw the letterhead. It was from Bailey and Bailey, Roger's solicitors. She read the letter twice. Some of it was in sort of legalese, so she did not really understand what was meant. But it did say a Mr. Malcolm Green would be calling on her at 11:30 a.m. on the 17th of December to explain everything. At last, she thought, this nightmare will be over, and perhaps some money, and get her niece sorted out, privately. Oh! A week passed by and the 17th arrived. Most of the snow had now gone, so Mr. Green would not have a problem getting here. She looked at her clock. 11:40 a.m. and no sign of Mr. Green. She could not help it, but became slightly irritable. All her life she had been punctual and expected it of others. Her meandering thoughts were interrupted by a rat-a-tat-tat on the front door. There followed another rat-a-tat-tat as she was halfway to the door. She called out, "I'm coming! I'm coming! Hold on there!" There was Mr. Green standing there, smart black suit, adorned with a pocket watch, and to top it all, a nice trilby hat. "Ah, Mrs. Stanton, Malcolm Green from Bailey and Bailey, your late husband's solicitors." "Oh, please come in." I do apologise for my lateness. I got stuck in traffic going up Marley Hill. Traffic all over the place. Still a lot of snow there, you know. I'm lucky to have got here when I did." "Oh, think nothing of it, Mr. Green. Come inside and get warm. I've got the electric fire on, and you can warm yourself." If it's all right with you, Mrs. Stanton, then I would prefer to sit at the table with you. I have lots of papers and so on to show you and discuss." They sat at the table, and the leather-smelling briefcase was opened, and a bundle of old-looking papers were pulled out, tied with a red bow. The smell of the papers reminded Margaret of an old dusty book that had probably lain untouched for a very long time. Sort of a library smell. I'm sorry that all of this has taken so long, Mrs. Stanton, but we did really have to conduct some rather lengthy research and investigations into some of your late husband's financial dealings." "Oh, I know these things can sometimes be a bit laborious. I do understand." "Anyway, Mrs. Stanton, all is resolved now, you will be pleased to know. I'll start with Mr. Stanton's will. In it he stipulates that all of his assets have been bequeathed to you. That also includes this house." Margaret smiled and peered at the document spread out before her. Would you like me to detail it all for you?" Margaret nodded. "Well, start with the bank. Cash in Barclays Bank, £35,600. Margaret gasped. He had 2-unit trust accounts, and these are worth approximately £14,000, based on values obtained last week. The house, your house, is worth £350,000, according to Akers, the estate agent in town." Margaret felt tears welling up as she wiped her eyes. Her frugal nightmare was at an end. She could buy the food she wanted. She could have her operation, be pain-free, not have to worry about bills, turn on her central heating again. They were tears of sadness for Roger, and tears of happiness that she shed as she looked across the room at his black and white frame photograph, resting next to the small silver candlesticks. But Mrs. Stanton, that's not all." "Not all? What do you mean, Mr. Green? I'm happy with this. I love that man, you know, and I know he loved me." Quite so. Allow me to show you this." With that, he slid a rather yellowing document in front of her. At the top of the document were the letters R.T.Z. "What's R.T.Z., Mr. Green?" "Oh, that stands for Rio Tinto Zinc. For your interest, it merged with Consolidated Zinc in 1962. Rio Tinto Company merged with the Australian firm Consolidated Zinc to form the Rio Tinto Zinc Corporation. Net income, in US dollars, you understand, 10,400,000,000, and that valuation was in 2020. Yes, 2020. Margaret was puzzled, as Roger had never mentioned this. This Rio Tinto business, or whatever it was. "If I may continue?" "Please do." "Your husband has purchased shares in this company. The original Rio Tinto Zinc, based in Rio de Janeiro, and I think that's in Brazil. That was in 1961. It was just before the big merger with Consolidated Zinc, and the value of his shares soared. Even after some decreases in the requirement for zinc in the 1980s, you might remember that, the shares retained most of their value. Would you like me to tell you the estimated value as of last Thursday from our stockbroker source?" "Well, yes, if you'd be so kind, Mr. Green." "As I said, as of last Thursday, the value of Mr. Stanton's shares, wait for it, was £975,482.16. Margaret almost fell off her chair with the revelation of revelations. She did not say anything as she slowly made her way to the oak cabinet, pulled down the cabinet handle, her bony fingers grasping at the brandy bottle, and poured 2 large brandies and made her way back to the table. She toasted to Roger and knocked the warming contents back in one. They continued talking about some minor details, and the fees due to Bailey and Bailey, which came right at the end. It was a large fee, but not too large for a new millionaire. "I hope this news has cheered you, Mrs. Stanton. I am so pleased for you. I know you've had a very difficult time, what with one thing and another. We are here for you to help with any investment decisions you might have. We're only a phone call away, you know." "Oh, it certainly has, Mr. Green. It certainly has. I shall be in touch when I've had a little break, away from all this cold." Were you thinking of going away? Maybe to South Africa, where the sun shines almost every day? The sun would do you the world of good, you know." "And where would that be, Mrs. Stanton?" "I shall venture forth to the home of R.T.Z. Rio, to sit by the beach and watch all the frolicking of bronze bodies, laughing and happiness and joy. Yes, indeed, it has to be Rio. I'm so happy for you, Mrs. Stanton. I really am. I'll bid you good day and await your call on the investment front. I'll see myself out." Margaret waited, and the front door closed behind him. She toddled over to the drinks cabinet, this time a little faster, her knees not so painful, and poured another brandy and turned the thermostat up high. Quite soon she heard the gurgling of hot water coursing through the radiators. Heaven! She was slightly giggling as she dialed the local travel agent. "Ah, Rio.